Today, the session will be moderated by Valerie. Valerie works at the Air Center and also the Blue Mission Atlantic and Arctic, BlueMissionAA. And she will, let's moderate a very interesting session, the BlueMissionBANOS, the CSA that coordinates the implementation of the mission Ocean and Waters in the Baltic and North Sea. I mean, Angela will, I'm sure I've seen her presentations. She certainly will give us a very exciting presentation. They've been working with a lot of results. They also already organized a very interesting arena, and they organized a second arena, if I'm not be wrong, in the next few months. I mean, and I hope she will say more about this arena. That's a very interesting event to participate, especially if you work or live in the Baltic and North Sea. But then I go back to Valerie. Valerie worked on sustainable economy implementation in the Baltic region between 2019 to 2033. In his previous role as project manager for the Baltic Ecoregion Program, she conducted several research projects on ocean value at risk, blue financing, and maritime spatial planning. Valerie was also involved on several Baltic community of practicing working groups in ecosystem-based management and ocean governance, as well as an observer of the Baltic Marine Environment Protection Commission, well known as HELCOM. As part of the BlueMissionAA, Valerie tries to link sustainable blue economy, which is the focus of the BlueBanos CSA, and the preservation and the restoration of marine and coastal ecosystems and biodiversity, which is the focus on the Atlantic and Arctic Lighthouse. And she will help us to find upscale, replicate marine restoration marketable solutions, working closely with small and medium enterprise. So I invite Valerie to take the floor to introduce Angela, and we will be on the background. I hope you have a really good time here with Angela. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jose, for that introduction, and welcome everyone. Thank you for attending our weekly hour today, and I'm really excited to get started on this weekly hour. Angela and I know each other from a few years now while I was working in the Baltic region, and it was always such a pleasure and so informative to work with Angela, and I learned a lot from her and also her Submariner network. So just to kind of cover, I can't go into all the detail of her bio because it's very extensive, but I'm going to try and do it justice by covering some of the key things. So what I wanted to share today was that Angela is a founder of S.Pro Sustainable Projects, as well as the initiator and manager of the Submariner Network for Blue Growth, EEIG, which brings together public authorities, private companies, as well as research institutions from around the Baltic to promote innovative and sustainable use of marine resources. Angela has been involved in the development of integrated maritime policies since 2001, being lead author of key documents, guidance notes, studies, and roadmaps, as well as acting as strategic advisor to national and international authorities, including the European Commission and the UN. Between 2016 and 2019, she led the EU Maritime Spatial Planning Assistance Mechanism, a European Commission service for member states to support them in their efforts to implement the Maritime Spatial Planning Directive, which you'll also hear as MSP. She has developed and led more than 30 projects, studies related to the blue economy within Europe, including numerous multi-stakeholder processes. So within the Submariner Network, she supervises and develops, initiates, and supports services related to closing the gap between research and industrial societal applications for the sustainable use and protection of marine resources, including support to product development, innovative blue finance, new forms of agriculture and processing. What I'll do is also I'll include some of these links of Submariner and the BlueMissionBANOS URLs, so you can all visit that during the weekly hour today, and they will all be included as part of the recording that will also be up on the YouTube later on. So I'm going to hand over the floor now to Angela, and We do have two audiences, just so one live here on Zoom, and we also have YouTube, and we also have a lot of people that actually directly contact us via WhatsApp. So there will be questions coming in from different platforms, so bear with us. But in the meantime, please do include any questions you have in the Q&A section of this webinar. Thank you very much. Over to Angela.
Thank you, Valerie. And now to me, in terms of presenting to you what we are doing under the framework of our task as coordinator of the BlueMission BANOS. BANOS is standing for the Baltic and the North Sea. And what is this mission about? It is an initiative it's an entirely new type of initiative, which was launched in 2021 by the European Commission. And essentially, the idea is to really focus on some of the key challenges we are facing in Europe, but actually, of course, also globally. And one of them is, of course, related to our oceans and the restoration of our oceans. And what are therefore the key objectives which are necessary in order to reach in 2030 is: one, to reduce marine pollution; second, to increase biodiversity of the oceans again; and third, and that is the focus we have in the Baltic and the North Sea, is to establish a climate-friendly and circular, sustainable blue economy. So to achieve a transformation of the blue economy, given the fact that all of us are, as human beings, we are not only sort of depending on the oceans for preservation, but we are also, of course, depending on the ocean in order to make our human life being, and this is including the economy. I could have also given a speech on what we are doing with the SUBMARINER Network, which is celebrating its 10th anniversary this year. But actually, because, and why do I say I could have also given you a lecture on SUBMARINER Network, is that what the mission Ocean is trying to achieve is really 150% match of what the SUBMARINER Network has been trying and successfully trying to do over the past 10 years. So we are very happy that, you know, with such kind of projects and initiatives, bottom-up networks, you can really make policy change, because it's really sort of that the European Commission, the Parliament, has really adopted this approach based on the work of institutions like the SUBMARINER Network, but of course also other institutions around the Europe, which have always sort of lobbied for that we really have to do something in order to restore our oceans. So what is, you know, our task as sort of the BlueMission BANOS coordinators is basically we are coordinating this task. We are sort of the intermediary between the European Commission in Brussels, but then also the stakeholders, the local stakeholders, the regional stakeholders in the Baltic and the North Sea. And essentially what we are aiming to do and what we have done over the past year is basically to bring the relevant stakeholders, to inspire them, to engage them, and to support them to really take the actions which are necessary in order to make the blue economy carbon neutral and circular by 2030. What does it mean, blue economy, carbon neutral and circular? There are also certain sub-objectives. Of course, in terms of climate carbon neutrality, it's very important to achieve clean shipping, green shipping. At the same time, also to increase regenerative ocean energy, but doing it smartly, and to adopt immediately these ocean energy fields with a kind of multi-use concept, so that once you have an offshore wind park, that you straight away combine it with either low trophic aquaculture, with even sustainable fishery, to have it done in a way that it even achieves nature restoration. And this has to be planned very, very early on, much earlier, even when such kind of offshore wind park is available. So that's one, or the third objective. And the third objective, the third sub-goal, is actually to also increase low trophic aquaculture. Low trophic is relating to algae cultivation, mussel cultivations. So those species where you do not have to apply any feed to them, and who are even sort of picking up the nutrients, who are increasing water quality, and who, you know, magically actually are also doing something good in terms of carbon uptake. And not only to increase the cultivation of these kind of species, but of course also to then increase product development, because these kind of species, be it, you know, algae biomass or mussel biomass, it's not only good for food or for feed, but it's also extremely interesting material. So it's a biomass which you can use in fibers for textiles, but also for packaging, for bioplastic, etc. And what we are lacking here in Europe is actually, you know, the biomass. We do not have such kind of large algae cultivation fields. The industry would already pick up on it, but we do not have that much space. For us, sort of this type of cultivation is really a newbie, and it's sort of like inventing agriculture now in the year 2024. So there's a lot of efforts needed in order to sort of achieve this, and these are our clear sub-objectives: to get the relevant stakeholders, be it from administrations, but of course also the innovators, the company supporters, as well as the researchers on board, in order to take the real steps which are necessary to achieve these objectives by 2030, where I have to say this is in 6 years' time. So what are our specific objectives here? Is so inspiring, increase awareness. At the same time, however, also to develop a monitoring framework in view of what does it really mean in terms of having achieved a climate neutral, carbon neutral blue economy? What is our baseline from which to start from, and which kind of indicators do we have to monitor in order to show, in order to assess that we are on the right track? And then, of course, to be really in terms of supporting that we are reducing duplication of efforts, we actually really have to get the critical mass of actors together. And because there are not so many people still involved in these new innovations, it's even more important to get those who are involved really to work together and to get their act together. So to really sort of combine what has been going on in different projects, in different initiatives, and to foster collaboration. Of course, also to then explore synergies and coordination with the other EU missions, and then to create a long-term transparent governance structure. And I come to this later on. What does it actually mean? Who governs the EU mission? And who is we? We are, as I have already mentioned, us as the lead coordinator, the SUBMARINER Network. I'm actually giving this lecture from the beautiful maritime city of Berlin. So we are actually really just the coordinators. We are not the ones who are in the water and doing the actions. For this, we do have our satellites in all the countries which are sort of surrounding the Baltic Sea, as well as the European North Sea. And we have taken those actors who are not only already members in the SUBMARINER Network, but who are actually sort of already, by all their activities and initiatives, interested in promoting the mission ocean. Otherwise, it would not work, such kind of CSA, because we really, all these institutions are sort of saying, okay, we are very happy to sort of, be in this coordination role. We would have done it anyhow, and now we have the project and we are supported by the European Commission in order to do so in a better way. So we do have satellites in all the different countries, basically tasked with sort of identifying the actors, getting the actors together, identifying innovations, identifying citizen engagement activities, etc. And some of them have then very specific tasks, but all of us are the ones who are bringing the mission into the local field, because this is something which is not possible to get done from Brussels, because you really need to know the local actors in order to get the actions done. That's pretty clear. So I'm now presenting this project very structured according to our work packages, but I hope that I will still do it in an engaging way. What does it mean to coordinate such kind of blue mission in the Baltic and the North Sea? Well, first of all, of course, there is coordination, communication. So basically what I'm doing here today, this is part of work package 1. And in order to know to whom to communicate, to know who to coordinate, you have to know your stakeholders. So we have a huge, extensive list of stakeholders. We are currently running a stakeholder list with 10,000 individuals. This may not sound that many, but what is the beauty of it is that we are really talking about individual people who we can really mail to individually, and we know whether they are interested in algae or whether they are interested in offshore wind, whether they are from the industry, whether they are from research, whether they are from the administration. And I think it's very important to know who your stakeholders are. And this is really sort of an absolutely ongoing exercise, which is in addition to, of course, then also using our social media followers, etc. But with this kind of stakeholder mapping, we are really able to pinpoint the right stakeholders, to manage sort of the right dissemination to them. And in addition, it's a kind of monitoring, because we can actually really on a daily basis tell you how many companies we already have in the Baltic or the North Sea area which are dealing with algae products in the food industry, or we can tell you how many researchers are currently working on ecosystem-based management. So it's really a statistic. And in terms of, the history, I can tell you that when we started 10 years ago with low trophic aquaculture, you could really count stakeholders who can spell algae by your 2 hands. It would be sufficient. And now we have, in 2021, we did sort of a very major survey, and we already have more than 500 companies active in the Baltic and the North Sea, which are now dealing with algae cultivation and product development. So quite a success rate in terms of 10 years of development. So these are our individuals. And then at the same time, as I said, we are really trying to bring various projects, various actions together, because, many projects or many initiatives are sort of coming from different perspectives, but are dealing with the same topic. So they may come more from a researchy point of view, others come more from an industrialist point of view, others are sort of dealing more with the regulatory issue. Some are more based in the north of the Baltic Sea, some are based sort of more in the North Sea. And it's really valuable to bring these different stakeholders together from time to time in order to basically ensure that we are not reinventing the wheel once more, and that we get sort of consensus on what are sort of the real paths forward, in order to therefore then to define the next step of actions which are necessary in order to really implement the initiatives which are necessary in order to restore our oceans. So that's, just a glimpse into what we are doing when we are talking about communication, dissemination, exploitation, coordination. And then we have the work package, which is especially dealing with the mission governance. What does it mean, mission governance? Actually, the basic question is who governs, who will govern the implementation of the mission ocean? Is it the European Commission? Is it the national EU member states? Is it actually rather sort of the local stakeholders? Is it more industry? Is it perhaps the transnational organizations which are already existing, especially also in the Baltic Sea, such as the Sea Conventions, OSPA or HELCOM? So it's a question. Nobody has told us, in a sense. I think this is something we have to define as sort of the joint stakeholders. And what we are sort of now doing as the initial preparatory coordination action is basically to screen which kind of transnational organizations do we have already in place, who would be sort of the interested parties who are really sort of, interested to take action, and to create synergies between these structures, and to really work with these existing structures. So we have established a reference group where basically representatives of these existing structures are included, and where we are discussing what are sort of, what is needed, what kind of structure is needed in order to implement the mission, also on a long-term basis, and to see who can really sort of then drive the actions forward, and also to sort of see that the regulations are changing, etc. And just to give you an example, I know that not all of you are coming really from the Baltic and the North Sea, that what do we mean with existing structures and working with existing structures? That yes, before the mission was created, there were, of course, also other initiatives. And so we do have in the Baltic Sea region already for more than, I think it's sort of like 15 years now, that there is a so-called macro-regional strategy of the Baltic Sea region existing, which has its structure. It has different policy areas, which are then sitting with, very often with ministries in certain member states of the Baltic Sea region, and which are already active, of course. And you see here sort of the linkages between sort of what we are doing under the mission and the various policy areas which are dealing with nutrient reduction, with the blue bioeconomy, with green shipping, with innovation, with maritime spatial planning, as well as with energy. And we basically had a meeting with them. And what was interesting is that all of them said, wow, this is a great initiative, because actually, yes, we are coordinating our fields when it comes to shipping, etc. But, what we need is a kind of overarching coordination of what is happening in terms of ocean governance, in terms of the blue governance. So they were very much welcoming, and I think this is a good example. For the North Sea, we are now doing the same, because currently there are big initiatives from the member states, initiated by the Netherlands together with France, Germany, and even UK, to create the so-called North Sea Greater Basin Initiative. And here we have also said, well, this is ideal. We have to combine it with the stakeholder process, which is necessary in order to achieve the objectives of the mission ocean. So it's not a duplication. It's important in terms of stakeholder engagement to combine these different initiatives, and basically also to make it clear to stakeholders that they should rather only have to come to one conference and to speak with one voice, to one process, and to bring basically these processes together. However, then this was governance. So this is, of course, sort of the policy area. It's, of course, also including industry, etc. But then we have the citizens, us as citizens, who actually have to somehow, be on board of the mission ocean, because essentially it's us who are sort of the people who are then deciding, who are making sort of actions happening, and who are sort of buying the right products. With this kind of project, however, one has to be aware that we cannot sort of have really activities where we are dealing with individual citizens. So what we have decided to do is rather to support and engage with those institutions who are on the spot already the key experts, the key initiators in view of engaging with citizens. And these are, of course, normally the NGOs on the spot, but also many research institutions are active with citizen science activities, who are reaching out also to schools, to universities, working with local actors, etc. So we are strengthening, first of all, we have mapped those who citizen engagement activities and institutions. And this, by the way, you can also download already on our website, this mapping exercise. In addition, we have mapped those exercises and activities which are really then engaged in citizen science, which is, of course, slightly different. It's a subgroup where you are sort of engaging then citizens in really sort of collecting data, which is then beneficial for scientists to do their research. Classical example is, of course, also, as always, beach cleaning. But there are also many other examples where citizens can really sort of, foster the work of what scientists are doing. So we have done so. We are then having pilot cases in certain regions and countries, in Poland, in Denmark, in Belgium, where we're working very specifically with specific citizen support groups. And out of that, we are developing sort of a blueprint, a help desk, where sort of the citizen engagement networks can sort of, ask our support also in future on how they can sort of, do the activities in a better way in order to engage the citizens in view of mission ocean related actions. And then I'm now coming to the field of business and innovation. It's industry, of course. I mean, we are talking about the sustainable blue economy. So we do have to engage with the offshore energy companies. We have to engage with the shipping industry, but we actually also have to engage with the industry on land, because in the end, this is now not promotion, but just to give you big shot names like IKEA or Adidas, those are the companies you would not normally relate to the ocean. But they are the ones who are interested in receiving new materials, receiving new fibers, algae-based fibers for their packaging, for their football shoes, for their football shirts, etc. So it's not only that we have to engage with industry and companies which are really in the water. On the contrary, we have to engage with those who are on the land, because that's where normally the industry is based. And how do we do that? Basically, we are running 5 distinct innovation cycles. We are actually bringing the mission to even then a more focused geographical sub-focus area, and you see them here on our upper left-hand corner. And here we are sort of actually identifying the actions and the actors which are active in these geographical regions in mission-related activities, either now or those actors who are interested in taking on board such kind of innovations. And then we are sort of looking into these innovations and we are engaging them in our arenas, and we are developing sort of the action plans for mission implementation for actually really the next years to come, in order to give advice to the investors, be it public or private, in terms of what are the priority actions which should be financed in really from tomorrow onwards. And we are not talking necessarily about research projects, we are talking about innovation implementation projects. So here again, you see that we are then always we are concluding an innovation cycle with an arena. An arena is a 3-day-long event where we are organizing various workshops in various formats in order to co-create and identify these actions, and to basically also bring the stakeholders together in terms of really having mission assemblies to vote on the actions which are necessary. And we had the first one last year in Gothenburg. You see, we had 500 participants, even for 37 countries, even though our focus was on Sweden, Denmark, and Germany. We had many pitching events and matchmaking, and you can see that 70% of the participants were actually not from science, not from innovation, but really those who want to take them on board. And you can also see here our regional roadmap, which was the resulting product from this mission arena, where it was really jointly voted on 57 agreed actions around 8 different goals, which we sort of, basically showed in a big picture. And, if you are interested, you can also download this roadmap on our website. And it was a very effective political tool, because with this roadmap, which really had been voted on, we were sending this out not only to European Commission services, but also to the regions, the policymaker, the decision makers, the funders, the financiers from Denmark, from Germany, from Sweden, in order to give them guidance on what the next steps are important to take. And as was already mentioned, we are already now going into our second cycle, and we are, not repeating the event because the focus is different, since the priorities of the Baltic states, Finland, and East Sweden, so from the Baltic Sea, may be slightly different in terms of what is on the agenda, but they may also not. But what is important is that, of course, the stakeholders who will attend will be different, because focus is on those local actors. And here I do not now go into detail, but you can see that, in terms of the different types of workshops, we again will have a plethora of 18, 20 different workshops running, be it on shipping, be it on what is sustainable fishery, what are the actions necessary, or what are also the new jobs we are looking for in coastal communities. What does it mean to turn from fisherman into a sea ranger? What kind of jobs do we need in terms of running offshore wind parks? What kind of jobs and qualifications do we need in order to run an algae cultivation or a processing plant? And what type of skills are therefore also necessary to be taken on board and fostered then by sort of the educational authorities who are then behind it? So then, last but not least, we do have the monitoring. As I said here, the important aspect is that we do have in the Baltic and the North Sea, as everywhere in Europe. Of course, we do have monitoring when it comes to the environmental state of our oceans, but we are looking into the monitoring of what does it mean to be carbon friendly and a carbon friendly blue economy. How can we measure this, that we are achieving this goal, and what does it mean, circularity, and how can we sort of have indicators which are really monitored in the long term? And this means that this cannot be something which is done by our project, because we are finishing in 2 years' time, and which is also sort of not as sort of so costly, so that it's actually taken on board by the countries within their normal monitoring exercises per se. And here you can see that we first, with every monitoring, of course, if you want to measure something, you first have to know from which kind of baseline you are starting from. So this was our first exercise that we now, and we have just submitted it, and you can actually also download this from our website, that we have actually done the baseline study on where do all our countries stand in terms of climate-friendly blue economy. Where are we in terms of green shipping or ocean energy or low trophic aquaculture, etc. And from that, we are now sort of developing the monitoring framework. And you can here actually also see in terms of, you know, mission objectives, how are they supported by national strategies, that yes, thumbs up when it comes to blue energy or waterborne transport. But when it comes to sort of the innovative uses, low trophic aquaculture, you know, we see very much a mixed picture. And we even very often we have some countries where we even have problems to identify a person who is supposedly responsible in a ministry for these kind of innovative fields. And this, of course, also then makes policy making difficult, even though innovation, industry, etc. are already there. And here you can also see in terms of what kind of indicators are available, how many we have identified for which field. And from this kind of existing indicators mapping, we hope to achieve in the coming months to sort of, you know, bring this down to a much more realistic indicator level, which is then possible. I skip that. So basically what we are now doing in the coming months is that, again, also for the monitoring, similar to the governance, we do have a reference group formed of experts across the Baltic and the North Sea region, with whom we are working together in order to really then coming to the specific, hopefully just 15 to 20 indicators we will recommend in the future to come to be monitored. And last but not least, we are working on this continuous mapping of exercises. And yes, we are running Excel sheets, etc., but actually we also do have a new service called Wavelinks, which is actually not only operational in the Baltic and the North Sea, but it's actually also operational in the Atlantic Arc, and is actually now in the process of going European scale. And basically with this dashboard, you can sort of search for, you can basically search what kind of regulations are available, what kind of publications are available, what kind of citizen engagement projects are there, who are sort of, which kind of projects have been working with which. And you can see here already that, you know, this kind of artificial intelligent search system is really also necessary, given the fact that it's, from a human point of view, almost impossible to really then search 5,900 different projects according to the different criteria. And this is basically the basic. Again, it gives us the ground in order to do sort of the coordination, but it is also for you a ground in order when you're looking for knowledge, for information, for specific projects. You're very much welcome. It's an open access system to actually also access wavelengths, and you can find it also on our website. And I think with that, I have said enough about the BlueMissionBANOS, and I'm very much looking forward to questions from your side. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Angela. That was such a rich and informative presentation, and really impressive to see what the BlueMissionBANOS has already achieved and put together. And I know as coordination and support hub for the Atlantic and Arctic, we really have a lot to learn and take away from the BlueMissionBANOS, and to really grow in our own region, especially the things that you were mentioning about the mission arena and how you come together to vote on some key actions. I think that was really inspiring. And also the help desk that you have, I'd love to hear more about that. Maybe not right now because we have a lot of questions that have come in, but maybe we can have a bilateral discussion, or if we have time today to discuss it a little bit more. Gosh, I have so many questions from your presentations. We did receive quite a few as well, so I'm going to try and juggle all of this as best I can. But if we don't get to everything, what we could do is send you the questions, and maybe you can respond, and then we'll collate everything and make it accessible to everybody that's here today and those that will listen later on. I think for me, some of maybe if I can kind of use my facilitator hat here and just start off a little bit with the circular aspect of this, because I think what I found while working in the Baltic, that's a huge gap that the Baltic region has. According to some of the research that I did earlier, we definitely saw that the recircular part only covers about 9 billion euros compared to the overall economy of the Baltic, which is like 286 plus billion. So in terms of that, how do you feel that this gap can be closed for the Baltic?
Yeah, I think that most important is that we're working a lot with the regions, and basically and we are here especially also working with the clusters, because as we all know, in order to achieve circularity, etc., one company or one action on its own is not sufficient and cannot make the change. So you do need a systems approach and a system solution. And here we really find that more and more in the Baltic Sea region, and it's really more and more because I've been involved here 20 years, and 20 years ago that was a no-go. But now we really see that in more and more countries and even regions, so-called blue clusters or blue-green clusters are sort of created, who are bringing the different actors together on a local scale in order to really identify joint solution, short supply value chains, and to also get the cross connect between the blue and the land. And I think this is, it takes time, but it's this kind of approach and replication which is necessary. And I think we are now also in a stage where we get acceleration, because we do not have only, we are now beyond the stage where people are saying, well, go away with your weird idea, etc. So we do see more and more success stories, and which are then, of course, sort of, readily picked up. Yeah, that's the short answer. We are struggling a little bit, I would say, in terms of that regulations are lagging behind dramatically behind the reality. So we still do not have licensing systems in place which are smooth and soft and easy to go. We now just recently had sort of that certain species got into the novel food catalog, so that was a success. So there's a long way to go, and also to divide the gap between agriculture policy and aquaculture policy. So the blue, as I really can say, is, I mean, aquaculture is only in existence for 100 years or so, so therefore we shouldn't be really surprised, but it's a long process. But the clusters are important.
Yeah. Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for bringing those up, because I fully agree. And I'm loving seeing some of these clusters being born. Here in Ireland, we have one for regenerative seaweed. So before I move on to governance, because you brought up some really key points on governance, we did receive a question on circular economy here. So I'm going to kind of read it. I had to edit a little bit, but people living in emerging countries do not contribute as much as developed countries to the current level of emissions. Energy intensity is very low in most of the economy countries, and transition costs are very high. Which will be the priorities for emerging countries to promote circular, carbon neutral, sustainable blue economy?
Well, first of all, I have to say that when I, for instance, talk now about low trophic aquaculture, the biggest cultivations and the biggest potential for algae cultivations, etc., is not in Europe, not necessarily in Europe. So we are working, but that's outside mission. But I mean, we are working, for instance, on large-scale projects in Namibia, off in the Caribbean, etc., where these kind of new economies can really support local communities, coastal communities, bring new income resources, etc. So I think this is very important. And so it's not necessary to have expensive offshore wind energy industries in those countries. But of course, it is interesting also for those countries to work with these new type of blue economy fields. That's the first one. Second, I mean, you know that there are quite a lot of carbon offsetting projects, especially in emerging countries. So in terms of nature restoration initiatives, maritime or marine protected areas, but also mangrove, seagrass restoration, etc., etc. That is something which is really also a chance, because there is definitely global finance around, which is then basically making such kind of ecosystem services, really in turning this into ecosystem payments. I mean, that's always the issue. Valerie, we both have worked on it. That yes, it's a nice concept, ecosystem services, but I mean, how do you turn this into really a payment transfer? This is something we are also working on in the mission here in Europe, because it's also not easy to actually really get funding for the for the ecosystem services in terms of nutrient uptake, carbon uptake, etc., of these parks. But therefore, these kind of concepts, for instance, can definitely also be transferred, and there is already the process of this happening to emerging countries. So that would be my take on here. I'm not talking now about sustainable fishery, etc. I mean, because this is such a difficult field. yeah, I mean, this I'm not talking about, even though I have to say that also here the efforts in terms of reducing the waste streams and better use of waste streams in fishery is, of course, then also something which is not only relevant for Europe, but also for any other country.
Great, thank you for the really full answer, and agree with you. I'm interested to see where this carbon offsetting, or shall I say blue carbon offsetting, is going to take us, what journey it's going to take us on, and how successful it will be, because as we all know, there's been other projects on land that have kind of mixed results. So I think it will be up to us to do better, but only if we have those tools, right, for monitoring and enforcing, which we're very much all working on, especially the Air Center with their Earth observation data and strategies. But yes, thank you for that. Sorry, the answers are coming in thick and full or fast, and so they're getting out of hand. So I'm going to try and do my best here to cover some of these. I'd love to go to the governance aspect, because you asked some really key questions, I think, about, well, who is it, whose role is it to govern? And I loved what you posed. You know, is it the EU, member states, local stakeholders, industry, so on and so forth? In your opinion, who would be best placed, and why? And I recognize this could be a Baltic regional answer, but maybe also you have a global or other regional answer to give. Thank you. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay, here I can, of course, give a very short answer, because I really believe that a network like ours, Submariner Network, is ideally placed, because we as a network, I see it also as a question, as a European Economic Interest grouping, we already have in our network ministries, science, companies, NGOs. So, I mean, we bring these different actors already together. So that's the easy answer. Because what is important is that once you get it into, you know, transnational sea basin conventions like HELCOM, which are governed by national ministries, slow process, and of course, because it's consensus based, so you have the lowest common denominator. So you do not really get into innovation, into sort of, you know, demonstrators, etc., etc. And we are talking about 2030. Yeah, I mean, we are already, I mean, it's almost like the last attempt, because all the objectives we are talking about in the mission Restore Our Oceans and Waters are, of course, objectives which have been around for decades. Yeah. And now we are really, I mean, 6 years is nothing. So if we really want to sort of make an impact, no, we really have to get the active part of the stakeholders together, and we have to have a pact between industry, NGOs, administrations, and yes, also bringing the citizens on board, because it's not all nice and, you know, wonderful, etc., because we do have, even in the mission Restore Our Oceans, we do have conflicts, inherent conflicts, because, you know, if we are talking about carbon neutrality, it does not necessarily mean that the measures which are relevant in order to achieve carbon neutrality are sort of environmental friendly. So, you know, an offshore wind park is definitely something good for the climate, but it is not necessarily the best for the habitats in that sphere. So we do have a conflict, and this needs to get resolved, and we can only resolve it by sort of really very openly, not only talking but also listening, and basically to always sort of get this kind of priority setting and to take tough decisions. And this is not ultimately, of course, then, you know, politics are also then sort of supporting this. But I think it's our joint responsibility to not let us, we cannot sort of say, okay, these politicians, etc., etc. I mean, we have to lobby for this. And this is then therefore sort of a governance part. So I'm very strongly sort of advocating that you need sort of a coordination structure which takes on board all these stakeholders and which is neither top down nor bottom up, but brings these two elements together. And I mean, we are now in the lucky position that we get sort of funding from the European Commission. It is, of course, necessary in the long run that also the national governments and the industry are following, and that they are then sort of, you know, doing the real investments which are necessary. Because, I mean, this is not something which can be brought to the European Commission, which is, you know, just sort of the combination of national member states.
Thank you. I love that approach of equal kind of approach of top and bottom approach. I think, yeah, that's ultimately the ideal scenario. Sometimes not always the case, especially as we have other countries here outside of the EU on board with us. So yeah, but I love that. Okay, I'm going to jump over to the to the Zoom here Q&A. So we have from Valentina here. Are there other similar initiatives as this one in other European basins, such as the Mediterranean Sea, for example?
The structures are different. I mean, the mission, the so-called, I mean, the mission Ocean has 4 lighthouse areas. So, I mean, Valerie and Jose, who are organizing this one, they are dealing with the implementation and coordination of the mission Ocean in the so-called Atlantic Arc. Then there are colleagues who are sort of dealing with the coordination in the Mediterranean. And then for the Black Sea, it's not the Black Sea, I have to stress, given the fact that this is a European initiative, I mean, European Union initiative. And I mean, if you look at the geography of the Black Sea, so basically for the Black Sea, it's very much the mission Oceans and Waters, because it's the Danube Delta, of course, then also including the countries of the Black Sea, Romania and Bulgaria. So we do have 4 such lighthouse areas, but the organizations who are behind this coordination, they of course differ. And to my knowledge, at least, I receive a lot of study visits from other sea basins where they are sort of asking me on how they could create such kind of submariner network in the Med or in the Danube, etc., etc. But of course, there are various type of also collaborative transnational organizations in the other sea basins. But so mission project, mission coordination in 4 lighthouse areas, doing almost the same, but in different ways, because the sea basins are different and the organizations behind are also different. And yes, there are sort of, you know, certain transnational organizations also in other sea basins, but taking other formats.
I think you really nailed it in saying also how might the other regions set up a submariner-like network. I think that's the key, isn't it? It's about setting up these bottom-up approaches, like you were saying, getting citizens, getting industry, getting everybody around the table, dialoguing, and uniting and agreeing on the primary key activities or actions to take before reaching 2030 and beyond, really. Okay, thank you. Sorry, I noticed we're past 2 minutes past the hour. Angela, I wanted to check in with you if you can still stay on for maybe another 10 minutes or 13 minutes. So Hopefully our audience can too. But anyway, this is being recorded so they can watch it later. So just continuing on some of these questions. So we also had a question on what are the duration and the timeline of the BlueMissionBANOS project, and what is the allocated budget to run the project?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, the European project. So, I mean, you always have the 3 to 4 year timeline. In the case of BlueMissionBANOS, the timeline which was given to us is 3 years time. So, and we started in December 2022. So we have actually only 22 odd months left. We do not know what type of decision will be taken by the European Commission in terms of extending this type of coordination. Here I already lobby for, of course, extending it, given the fact that the mission, I mean, it's pretty clear. It's the objectives are running until 2030. So at least that kind of timeline should be given in order to have a support structure. So short answer, so we have another 22 months, but however, the detailed projects are running, I mean, the projects which are then under the mission are running for much longer. And the budget was or is 3 million euro, which is really, I have to say, not much, because you saw the number of project partners we have, 17. Given the fact that we are the Lighthouse area with most member states. So we actually have to cover 12 different countries and having satellites, etc. So you can do your own maths on with how much money this is ending up for individual organizations. And that is why I was also saying in my presentation, really, I can speak for all the organizations who are involved. They are very grateful that this CSA is existing and that there is at least some funding available. But I would really say that this is not for SUBMARINER Network only. This is really for all our project partners and members, that they are almost doing it out of enthusiasm and out of the fact that they are really supporting the goal of the mission Ocean, and that they are investing actually sort of a lot of additional resources into making this happen.
Yeah, thank you for that. Ditto for us in our coordination and support action hub in the Atlantic and Arctic. Lots of partners, but two different regions, which are hard to kind of bring together in a sense under one roof, if you will.
It's a message we always try to convey, that it's a pity that I mean, nothing to say that, yes, it's great to have a lot of funding into pure research, etc. But the appreciation that capitalization of results, stakeholder engagement, coordination, support, etc., that this is actually sort of also something which requires long-term funding, and quite a lot of funding is still to come. But I mean, we are getting there.
And by the way, thanks for promoting wavelengths, which also Atlantic and Arctic Lighthouse has been very much engaged with, because they're also partners in our Lighthouse. So we'll share that link with the audience a little later. Moving on, I have another question here from Muriel. Copernicus Marine Service is a user-driven service, and we would be pleased to be able to connect with this huge list of stakeholders to collect needs in terms of marine data and information. How to foster interactions?
Muriel, get in touch with us. You know how it goes with European data protection, etc., regulations. So I'm afraid I cannot share individual stakeholder lists, but we do have, I mean, And this is, I think, what you require in order to sort of really sort of get in touch with these individual stakeholders, but simply, you know, get in touch with us directly. And then this is definitely something a help desk service is for, in order to enable you to touch base with these stakeholders.
Yes, thank you for that. And that's the kind of add-on question to the first one there is this network uptaking Copernicus data to help reaching these objectives?
Sorry, can you, I didn't.
Yeah, sure. Is this network, so Submariner, uptaking Copernicus data to help reaching these objectives? And
Okay.
I'm not sure these, when they mean these, if they mean the Submariner objectives, the Mission Ocean objectives, or so maybe Valentina can clarify.
No, but I think I know in terms of the answer, because I'm not saying that we would not do so, but we are not doing at the moment understanding our coordination service as a data coordination service. So this is something which is then taken up by our network members, our partners, who are then actually really dealing with environmental data, etc., etc. So, I mean, also when I was talking about, for instance, monitoring, this is indeed something where we are, it's an open question on who would be sort of the coordinating party for monitoring the economic data and, you know, the carbon neutrality data, etc. Given the fact that, of course, in the Baltic Sea region as well as in the North Sea region, I mean, HELCOM is, of course, the ones who are running the secretariat in order to do the HOLARs and the environmental assessments. But again, I can only repeat, this is not the data we are referring to when we are talking about Mission Ocean implementation. I would say, I mean, in this field, it may be that they could sort of do so, but it's an open answer. It's an open question. We would be happy to do so, but we simply do not, we are not tasked to do so, and we do not have the resources.
Got it. Thank you for that. Just the help desk. I don't know if you can share that link maybe with the audience too here today. That would be great. Because I would definitely be keen to explore what you're offering. And I gather that help desk is available not only to the Baltic region players or partners, but maybe beyond as well. Can you provide support further afield?
Yeah, I mean, we are, of course, smart, and I think, you know, Air Center is smart, and we are also a smart organization, and also our, you know, many of our project partners. So therefore, in fact, it's explicitly Vlis in Belgium, who are not only a project partner in BlueMissionBANOS, but are also project partner in yet another European-wide preparatory action for the mission, Prep for Blue, and who are also, by the way, generally speak, the partner in the North Sea who are dealing with citizen engagement for ages already now. And therefore, they, together with the partners in Ireland, they will run, or they are running, this help desk. And I'm very confident that they will also do, and this is European, sorry. So this is European, because they are in the European project, and then they are, however, also with a focus on the North Sea and the Baltic Sea project. And I think I'm very confident that they will do something similar we are doing with the submariner network, that even if BlueMissionBANOS comes to an end and these projects are coming to an end, there will be another project coming, and there will be, so that basically they are exactly the right institution, I think, in order to ensure that this help desk has a sustainable future in the long term, because it's in their institutional interest to run such kind of help desk. If I have, it's for Europe. It's definitely for Europe.
Super, thank you. I'd love to jump back to the low trophic topic, because I was quite surprised to hear that the partners in the Baltic, it had a mixed review, or mixed feelings about you showed that chart of voting. And I'm curious as to why that was, based on also knowing about the Baltic and how much emphasis they're kind of putting on low trophic development in the region. So could you just elaborate a little bit more on that? What's happening there?
I mean,
partners, thanks.
Because it was a very content-driven presentation. I don't know, it's a tendency I have. Just to explain, so these thumbs up and thumbs down, we're not referring to stakeholders' opinion or whatever. They were referring to whether a country, Latvia or Sweden or whatever, has already a national or has a strategy in place to promote low trophic cultivation and product development. And basically it's the reality, as I said, it's a long process that yes, there is an EU for algae initiative, there's a lot of promotion for low trophic cultivation, but this has not reached yet all the different countries. It's very interesting to see that here Belgium and the Netherlands, so the North Sea, are really much further ahead. I can also tell you why. I mean, first of all, they like to eat mussels, and then secondly, in the Baltic Sea we don't. So, but and then secondly, there is actually, I will now not give you the name, but there is a very active supermarket chain out there who are really interested in getting their own local production going in the North Sea, both for algae as well as mussels. So here you have the classical example that you really have industry push to say, like, we are really interested, yeah. And it's a big supermarket chain, so I mean they have a good lobby. And basically I think in some countries it's, you don't have it's not big enough in terms of even having one person in a ministry to deal with it. And then sometimes you also get signs not being exactly helpful in terms of, I mean, it's of course in your DNA, but to question always, I mean, to question on whether a nature-based solution is really something which is good. So in this hugely eutrophied Baltic Sea, I can understand that there are quite many who are resistant to the word nature-based solution and to put something into the sea, which is supposedly beneficial, but where you may say, well, but the long-term impact is, or if it's larger scale, imagine we have, this low trophic everywhere. What is then the actual result? Is it really that it's an overarching positive result? Yeah. So it will come. I'm very sure, Valerie, it will come. Yeah. But the research to have low trophic in low salinity areas, so up in upper Sweden and Finland, etc., is really new. And it is possible. I mean, this is what is shown, but it's pretty innovative.
Yeah, thank you for that full answer, and really interesting to hear about that the supermarket that you mentioned, because I could see that that would be kind of maybe entering into competition with one's own suppliers, though. So interesting. I'd be curious to hear more about that. But I could talk to you for hours, Angela. I have lots of questions still, and I'm sorry I haven't covered all of the questions from our audience, so I apologize for that. But as I said, we'll send those questions to you and your team, Angela, and then maybe we can get the answers, and we'll post those on the YouTube page. So I sorry I've gone over time again, so I apologize for that. And thank you for being so generous with your time. And thank you, audience, for your questions and for participating. And yes, and I think you said you were going to include your contact or somebody's contact details, so that if there are any further questions, they can maybe reach out to you or your team or to the your Lighthouse directly.
Yeah.
And you want to say about the
Yeah.
next arena. Talk about your next arena if you want to give those dates for your next arena.
Oh yeah,
too.
I mean, it's by the way back to back with the HELCOM conference, annual conference, and it's on Thursday and until Friday, 25th, 26th of April in Riga. Registration will open next week. Franny, who is also here, is our social media star and sort of sending out all our newsletters, etc. I think if you are interested, generally speak, the easiest also with data protection, etc., is always to go on our SUBMARINER network, sign up to our newsletter, and then you are sure that you will receive all the information. And the benefit of my weird name is that I'm only existing once in the world, and therefore can also be found very easily. But I'm sure that Fanny will also put the contact details into the real chat room.
Super. Well, thank you so much. Thank you for your time again and all the resources. Thank you, Franny, for putting that in. And we'll share all of that information. And yeah, and I look forward to the continued collaboration between our CSAs. We have the European Ocean Days coming up in Brussels that will both be there as well. So that's from March 4th to the 8th. If anybody hasn't signed up, well, I think it's now past the registration date, I'm afraid, but we're looking forward to those days, talking with the Commission and a lot of the stakeholders. Again, thank you, everyone, very much.
I mean, Valerie, join me in our efforts. I'm sure that Jose will do the same, that there we really have to jointly lobby that, CSAs, to have CSAs for 3 years is...
Sure.
It's nice. It's not nonsense, but I mean, it would be nicer to have them more long-term, because that is when people start. I mean, it takes so much time to first... I mean, I still walk around and tell even officials, etc., what the mission is, or they come to me and say, "But Angela, what is the mission, or what is a pledge, or why should I, etc." So it would be a pity if once we really got into the rolling, that it's over again. No? But we have been around for a long time enough that, I mean, we will continue to exist. So that's not...
But I think you bring up a good point too. Please, anyone that's listening or that can share this, please do sign the mission charter and pledge to the objectives of the Mission Ocean if you haven't done so already. This will help increase our chances of continuing the CSAs into the future and being able to support a lot of our local stakeholders, our industry and researchers in these endeavors. Yeah.
This is so much important, because, I mean, I didn't want to go into detail, but I mean, of course, we are in competition of limited public funds. So, and there is a competition, it's clear. It's also priority setting. And we are 1 out of 5 missions. And so there's mission climate, cities, and
Answer.
healthy soils and cancer, etc. And if I would ask my kids, give me the odd one out, the odd one out is the mission ocean, because people do not live in or on the ocean. That is the issue. So therefore it's really important that you pledge, because the other missions, they have similar activities with charters, etc., etc. But yeah, I mean, Mission Climate is about developing climate plans for cities. Of course, they have, I don't know, 450 cities, signing on and saying we want to also have a climate plan financed by the EU. That's easy, but I mean, to get the lobby of human beings living on land pledging for the ocean is sort of, the story always has to be that, it's on the land, the blue is on the land, and we are affected, and that's why, you have to pledge. So yes, and the pledge is, by the way, that you are saying, I'm doing action A, B, C, D. It can also cost €0, and or I would like to do an action, and basically this is in line with the Mission Ocean. So it's an easy peasy exercise, doesn't cost you anything, takes you max 20 minutes to fill in.
Thank you. And on that, I'll plug our MPA award, which we've launched, I think it was yesterday, the Atlantic and Arctic, but it's actually for the whole European region, all of the European seas. There is a call there to, if you want to apply for the award, that we do ask you to sign the mission charter. So that is one way to also increase those numbers. Again, we'll include that link in all the details of this talk later. But please, yeah, go and visit that. We're very excited. There will be 2 awards given during the European Ocean Day, given by the European Commission, along with Blue Mission Atlantic and Arctic. And so we're excited about that. And it's mostly focused on citizen engagement in terms of MPA, so how citizens are getting engaged, what they can do, the benefits, like you covered, Angela, to making sure that the communities that are living next to these MPAs get these benefits from the MPAs. So those carbon offsetting, maybe, whatever comes from that. All right, thank you. We better end. Oh my gosh, we're at like half an hour almost over. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.